So our final speaker before afternoon tea is Wendy Bennett.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to speak about an area of our work that we feel passionate about. As we all know, ALS MND is devastating a disease, not only for the person living with MND, but also their families. The Royal College of Nursing, which is a UK national nurses union, has quoted that a person with ALS MND can need as many as 18 health and social care professionals to provide care at any one time. So you can imagine that once that person dies, their carer is left and often can feel abandoned. It is hoped by the end of this presentation that you may be inspired of thinking of ways you can support people after the death of their loved one. Of course, you might be doing this already, but I'd like to share our way we help people who've been bereaved. We all know that hospices are pioneers in bereavement support. Our team realised that some of our families haven't been involved with the hospices, so might be missing out on their support. Once we realised there was a gap in our service, we decided to organise a memorial service specifically for families who had lost someone to ALS MND. In 2014, we held our first memorial service and 64 people attended this. After this, our bereavement support framework was evolved. Today then, I'd like to cover 3 areas. To introduce our bereavement support framework, including our annual memorial service, to be clear about the limitations of our support, and some practical recommendations. I thought we'd start with a quote from one of the most respected women in British nursing, Dame Cicely Saunders. She says that care and bereavement should be as important as the care we offer for the person at the end of their life. These memories are crucial to how the carer will cope in the long term in bereavement. So like most ALS MND care centres, we are a regional unit in the northwest of England. The population is around 1.6 million, and we live in a mix of urban and rural settings. We are very much a nurse-led service, and like for most of you, we care for people from diagnosis until their death. This is through our clinics based at the local hospices and as well as home visits. We are able to develop relationships not only with the person living with MND, but their families too. Prior to setting up our bereavement support, we came to feel as a team that we were sort of abandoning our families as we've been so involved with them during the time that their loved one was alive. As with most areas of ALS, there isn't any specific research or guidelines to draw upon. However, the National Institution of Health and Care Excellence, NICE, has published guidelines for the end of life. They state that professionals must maintain contact in bereavement in both the short and the long term. NICE doesn't define what long term is, but in our service we offer support over the first 12 months of bereavement and then maintain contact with the families through our annual memorial service. I think it's important too that support is offered from the people who cared for the family member. UNS suggests that people appreciate care and bereavement from the people they trust and know well. The MND Association published a report in 2016 after the government called for evidence on improving care for carers. As you can see on the slide, some comments were quite harsh that carers felt dropped and everyone left once the person had died. Knowing that most of the multidisciplinary team and carers visit regularly meant their house was very busy with visitors from different disciplines, and then suddenly we're not all there and life is extremely empty without the demands ALS places on the carer. The report concludes that by saying that it is vital that the experience of people caring for a person with a terminal illness is recognised and valued, and that they are supported accordingly after the person has died. We as healthcare professionals have a role to play in supporting this period of transition. With this in mind, Bridget Whitehead's study shows carers go into bereavement process physically and emotionally exhausted. Oon adds that they deny themselves time for themselves and, even more importantly, sleep. We wanted to show them that they're not forgotten. This had a practical challenge with the team covering such a large geographical area, and so the support needed to be indirect. So, this is how our bereavement support framework works. It's a simple and time-effective way of keeping in touch with people. I think we probably spend about an hour a month concentrating on it. On death, we always ring and send a sympathy card to the carer and their family, and their key specialist nurse, if possible, tries to arrange a bereavement visit. Around 6 to 8 weeks later, a handwritten card and poem is sent out to their next of kin. The words outline that we're still thinking of them and invite them to contact our team if they would like to. Actually, not many people ring at this stage. Another card and poem is sent out just before the first anniversary of their death. Again, reminding them that we are still thinking of them and appreciate that life is probably still difficult. This time we often can receive emails, cards or phone calls, as they are touched that we still remember them after 12 months. It is often nice to catch up with these people because they've started to heal and get on with living their lives. Admittedly, there's always a sadness when they talk about the person that they've lost. We decided on the timings of these cards after reading a study by Vasha Hassi and Hottenson. Both authors felt that phone calls, cards, and if possibly an annual memorial service helped the person feel that there was a continuity of care and they were not forgotten. We certainly have had a positive experience of this. Vasha Hassi's study goes on into more depth, stating around 6 to 8 weeks post-bereavement, friends start getting back to normal, and the realisation that that person is not coming back starts hitting them. We recently sent out a service evaluation questionnaire out to people who've been bereaved since we started the service in 2014. This was just to see how people felt about receiving cards and if they had any other suggestions that I'll discuss later. As you can see, people appreciated this small gesture. It was so good to receive the cards because it made us realise that you understood how hard it is to lose a loved one to this terrible disease. If I can draw your attention to the second comment, the first 12 months was a blur. This reflects what Bridget Whitehead highlights in her study, that carers are left physically and emotionally exhausted and can take 12 months for them to recover. There were lots of lovely comments, but the main theme is they appreciated they hadn't been forgotten and we still cared. A Time to Remember is our annual memorial service that takes place every May. It's a time where people can sit and remember people they've lost through poems, readings and music. For practical reasons, we hold it in the hospital chapel, and it has a spiritual atmosphere. But I must emphasise it is a non-religious service. We had our first memorial service in 2014, where 64 people attended. The numbers have been slowly increasing, and this year we had just over 100 people for us for the service. It's been noticed that a few people have attended every year since 2014, but the majority of the attendees come for around 2 years and then seem to stop coming. One comment we received from our service evaluation was that she attended the first year, but after that she didn't feel she needed to come again. Another felt after 2 years of attending, she felt she was getting stronger, and she felt that it would be better to remember her husband pre-motor neuron disease. Everyone who's been bereaved over the last 12 months receives an invitation. Also, the people who have previously attended the memorial service are automatically invited to the following year. This is the inside of our invitation. We hold it the hospital chapel at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. We ask our attendees to reply to say if they are intending to attend, so we have an idea for catering and organising the service. We also ask their permission to read out the person's name who's died. Their name is read out during the act of remembrance in the service. We often find people who can't attend will still send their name in to be read out so they know that that person has been remembered. With these people, an order of service and, if possible, the gift we give during the service is sent out to them. The order of service follows a collection of poems and readings, which members of our motor neuron disease team take turn in reading. The chief executive of our hospital attends, and she always takes part. We try and choose poems that give people a sense of hope, as well as a time to remember them. In the middle of the service, there is an act of remembrance, where the bereaved names are read out and candles are lit in their memory. This is a lovely part of the service, where nurses who have been involved with these read out their names. It's tricky, though, not to cry at times. Music plays a big part in the service, and this is carefully chosen. It gives people a time to reflect, and the atmosphere is lovely. At the end of the service, we invite people to add a card to the memory tree, which is given to them as they arrive. They can write their thoughts on this card and add to everyone else's memories. As you can see from the screen, here are a few cards that people have added to the memory tree. Another year without you, I still miss you, but the memories never fade. Neither will my love for you, love from your best friend and hero. My beautiful mum, I miss and love you every day. I miss your smile, lots of love. When we look at the comments, you start to realise the devastation MND has on families months and months after that person has died. When the families have put their card on the tree, we like to give them a small gift to take home. We try and relate it to the Forgetmenot flower, so they've received Forgetmenot seeds, a poem, or a bookmark. This year, I decided to give them a little plant pot with a candle. It needed a Forgetmenot sticker cutting out, and then it needed varnishing. Ah, that's nice, I thought, until I realised I had to decorate 90 more pots. A word to the wise, keep the gift simple. After the service, people are invited to also write in our book of remembrance. Not too many people take up this offer because I think they've said what they needed to say by adding the card to the memory tree. It is just giving people as many ways to remember their loved one. Then it's coffee and cakes. This is a lovely time where people will chat to people. This is a lovely time where people chat to the M&D team, and it's lovely to hear their family news. Often it's about new grandchildren, or going away, or just feeling better. Admittedly, there are still quite a few who are still struggling. 1 or 2 people have come for 2 to 3 years and have started recognising other people, so they are starting to chat together. Then they go home and we go, phew, another year done. Here are a few comments from our service evaluation. Of course, they're all lovely. We didn't receive any negative feedback, but of course we didn't receive all the questionnaires back. Out of the people who replied to our service evaluation, a few people suggested they may have benefited from a support group. Logistically, it would have been difficult to coordinate this group due to time constraints and, again, the large geographical area. There isn't a lot of information in regards to bereavement support groups. I am aware that crews and the hospices, of course, do offer this kind of support. Reed et al. Have studied bereavement support groups and feel they are valued, but you have to be mindful that people don't become too dependent on the group. I think we need to be a little bit more proactive in signposting people to charitable organisations such as crews and using the hospice's expertise in this area. There's a lot of value in pre-bereavement support. We hear so much about advanced care planning for the person with ALS, and we try and incorporate this into our care. I'm not too sure if we are as good at talking to families to explain what death looks like and how they will build up coping strategies to cope with the devastation. I think it's fair to say that with a condition such as ALS-MND, that people can experience bereavement as early as diagnosis, as there is little hope. The problem arises that ALS doesn't follow a planned course, and it is unpredictable, and often we cannot know the right time to start these pre-bereavement conversations. With time so limited, we often concentrate on ensuring the patient's wishes are documented, which is right, but I'm not too sure whether we have the confidence or the time to prepare the family for bereavement. Metzer and Gray conclude that if the correct pre-bereavement support isn't given, then some people are at high risk of prolonged grief. They go on to say that when pre-bereavement support is present, it shows that families may suffer lower levels of distress. Although this is from an academic article, the message is clear and simple. It is the small gestures of compassion that people appreciate and hopefully makes a difference to them. Please can I thank the Preston M&D team for all their support in the bereavement support framework. Without their time, and particularly at baking cakes, a time to remember wouldn't happen. They're my details, and thank you very much for listening.
Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation, Wendy. I think we've got time for one question. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask. Yeah, we have one lady.
Thanks, Wendy. I really enjoyed that. Can I just ask you, how does it, do you think since you've done this, it helps the care team as well?
Absolutely, yeah. We find the memorial services benefiting actually because it gives us closure as well, and we feel that, you know, we've remembered those people as well. So, yeah, it certainly does support us as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. That takes us to afternoon tea.